I hope you enjoyed the Zoominar yesterday with Pablo Alvarado as we were discussing the economy, and that's the good, the bad, and the ugly parts of the economy. Today, in our second in our Facts Over Fear series, we're going to be talking with Christy Rawlings. She's a CPA with Emerald Financial, and our topic today is the $2 trillion coronavirus response bill, the stimulus package that we've all been hearing about. So Christy, if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Christy Rawlings. I've been with Emerald Financial Partners for the last almost 15 years. I specialize in small business accounting and individual tax preparation. So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. And most recently, I've been doing PPP loans, trying to help my small businesses apply for loans and get money through the stimulus package.
And it sounds so simple, doesn't it? But it's not. It's taking a lot of your time.
It's easy, but the process itself has not been as smooth as it could be.
I'm really surprised to hear that, because usually government programs really go smoothly.
Well, they do, right? And then when you factor in they passed a law on the 27th of March. And the banks had to have it up and running by April 3rd. So that is a week.
Yeah, with a huge undertaking.
A huge, huge undertaking. And keep in mind that the banks are understaffed. Everybody is working from home, and there's only so much everybody can do from remote locations.
Yeah.
So it's been difficult.
Trying at best. I was on the phone probably the day after all of this was rolling out, and I was on hold for 9 hours. And patience isn't my thing. So it was very trying, but I understand there's only a certain amount of people that can do the job that we're asking them to do. And after the rollout, the banks weren't sure what direction, and they didn't know all of the details of it. So it's been a huge undertaking.
You're right. And to add on to that, the bankers are asking for information that they don't even understand what they're asking for. They're asking for payroll forms and payroll numbers, and they don't understand how the payroll forms aren't necessarily going to match your payroll summaries from your QuickBooks file or from your, any other software that you're using to do your small business accounting, whether it's Xero or anything like that, because they don't know payroll.
Right.
I had a client's application from one of our local banks get returned for incomplete information because the 940 did not match the wages on their form. But the 940 includes retirement benefits, which is a separate line item on their application.
Right. So, and in all transparency, you had to help me with some of our forms, because what seems like a simple form to fill out, if you don't know the accounting side, the payroll side, and what things merge, they're not that easy to fill out.
Correct.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you helping us today to get through some of that. So from what I understand, Chrissy, the stimulus package really affects 7 groups of people. And it's for individuals, small businesses, large businesses, hospitals and public health, federal safety net, state and local governments, education. And today, I think that for the most part, the people that are on our call with us are going to be individuals and small business. So if you would, can you help us to make sense of that? And just like I told Pablo yesterday, try to keep this like accounting 101. Talk to us like we've never heard accounting words, because we may not.
Okay, so if I end up saying a 4-letter word, I'm sorry, because sometimes I don't know what comes out of my mouth.
I'll remind you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I did give some slides to Diane. The first part that I wanted to talk about is for our W-2 employees who might.
You want us to pull that first slide up now, Christy?
If we can.
Sure. You want to go to the next one, Ange, the first?
Yep. Oh, yep. Thanks.
There you go. Perfect.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, so whether you're a W-2 employee and you've been completely furloughed or you've just had a reduction in hours, you are eligible to file for unemployment. So that would be the very first thing that I do is file for unemployment with the state of Maryland. As I was mentioning earlier to Diane, everybody is backlogged in some way, shape, or form. I can't even imagine the number of unemployment applications that have gone in. So it will take some time, but if you have not done so already, fill out the application online and submit that. Which on the last pages of the slides, I have all of the links that you can use to help you. The other thing,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to move on to the next point, but if you had a question.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if anybody has any questions, please go in the chat box so that we can address any of them. But I was surprised to know that you don't have to be unemployed to get some of these benefits. You didn't have to be laid off to get some of these benefits.
Correct. You do not have to be 100% laid off. You could just have a reduction in hours. And that was part of the expansion of the benefits. And I believe the first part of that was under the FFCRA, which was passed mid-March. And then they did the pandemic unemployment insurance with the CARES Act. So definitely file for unemployment. The next thing that I would be doing is calling my banker, whoever's my mortgage, holds my mortgage. If you have a federally backed loan, you can request a moratorium for up to 180 days. Diane and I were just talking about the credit impact of that. My understanding, and from what I thought I read, was that there is no credit impact, but we can get verification on that.
Yeah, we have our call tomorrow is going to be with David Ratty with Envoy Mortgage. He's going to speak directly to that. And I know that originally that was not the case about the credit, that your credit could have been negatively impacted. The Mortgage Bankers Association was going to bat to say, let's not do that. Let us try to avoid any consequence financially as well as through credit. We didn't want any negative impact as a result of that. So David will let us know tomorrow if that's been confirmed or not. But the financial side of that is any penalties for being late and anything gets tacked on. They're hoping to get that waived, and we'll see more about that tomorrow. Hopefully that's the case.
Okay. The other thing that I found when I was trying to do some research into this was I found that website that's listed there, the marylandbankers.com. And on that, it has all the local banks, and you can click on the individual banks, and they're telling you how they are helping their lendees or the people who have borrowed for that mortgage. So that would be, my next steps of what I would be doing. If you're renting, I would contact your landlord. Your landlord may not know that if their loan is federally backed, that they might be able to get forbearance as well on that. And you can provide some information to your landlord so that you don't have to pay rent for a couple of months. Which in fact, you can still not pay rent for a couple of months because since the courts are closed, they can't file for evictions or anything like that. However, as soon as the courts reopen, you can expect that to happen. So,
and there's two other things to that. One is we're going to have a property manager come in to talk with us in a little more detail with what they're dealing with. But one of the things is if somebody's lease is up.
mm-hmm.
So today their lease is up, but they say, I could just stay here rent free. Why don't I extend this? And now there's a breach of their lease agreement. That's going to be another thing. So we're going to talk about that when the property manager comes on. That date hasn't been set yet, but that's one thing. The other thing is with rentals. What was I going to ask about rentals? I don't remember. It'll come back to me. But there were two different concerns about the rentals and the eviction process. I'll get back to that. And if I don't remember today, I'll bring it up when we have the property manager course.
Okay. The other thing that this applies to is your vehicle. So if you're not making car payments, they still can't repossess during this time. So if you owe money and you can't make payments, the first thing that you should be doing is getting on hold for 9 hours and just call first thing in the morning as soon as you wake up, to get in touch with people. If you just say, oh, I'm not going to pay anything, that's the more chance of something bad happening. So take actions, be proactive, get in touch with the people that you owe money to and see what is available to you. The other thing is you can't have any cancellations of utilities or anything like that during this time. So.
And all that's so important because, I've been through 12 transitional markets and in the past 30 years. And there are going to be people that are hurting. There's already people in the first 30 or 40 days that are hurting. And there are going to be people that can't put food on their table. There's people that can't pay their rent. They can't pay their mortgage. They can't catch up. So it's so important, to your point, keep in touch with your landlord or your mortgage company and let them know what's going on, because the worst thing is if you ignore them, they can't help you. So the first thing in all of these different markets that I've been through is keep in constant communication. Don't avoid the call. And it's easy to do because when we're fearful, we bury our head and we get paralyzed. So I'm going to encourage you not to, because there's more answers if you're able to just work through the fear and talk to these people that are able to help you.
Well, and I think the other thing that comes into play when we're talking about whether or not we're going to be able to make our mortgage payment, or whether or not we're going to be filing for unemployment, is that pride that we all have as individuals. And I think just putting that aside and saying for a second, everybody in the United States right now is affected by this. Every single one of us. So
this levels us out, doesn't it, Christy? This levels us out. We are on the same platform.
Yes, exactly. So just putting that aside, and the person that you're talking to on the phone is wondering whether or not they're going to be able to make their mortgage payment too. So just keep that in mind when you're calling. Any questions on that before we move on to the stimulus checks that everybody is patiently awaiting?
Yes. Jessica says, I have had clients ask about forbearance, even if they recently refinanced. Does that matter?
I'm not aware of whether or not you've refinanced, as long as that whoever they refinance through, if it is a federally backed mortgage, the forbearance would still apply.
Okay. And we have a lender on the call, David Ratty, and he said it doesn't. It's okay. So it is okay to do a forbearance, David, if even if somebody has refinanced, say, in the last 30 to 60 days. Okay, that's correct.
Great, David. I even know the mortgage industry some. That makes me so happy.
You're a jack of all trades, Christy, and we appreciate it. Thank you, David.
Okay, so the stimulus checks. Everybody is eligible for the stimulus check, whether or not you filed a tax return, as long as you are within the income limits. So the biggest question I get is, I'm a senior and I just get Social Security. Do I have to file a tax return? No, you don't have to file a tax return. You actually don't really have to do anything, because they're going to pull your information from the Social Security Administration database. However, there is a website that the IRS has put up where you can just enter in your information. And that link is included in here on the last slide, where you just put in your information, your name, your Social Security number, what income you have, and you're done with it. So you do not have to file a tax return. A single mom who's living at home that makes $5,000 a year does not have to file a tax return to get the stimulus check. That person does need to go on the website on the IRS and put in their information so that they get that. But if you get Social Security, you don't have to go to the IRS website. You can as a safety precaution or measure, but it's not required.
Christy, while you're looking to your next point, I have another question. Would you like it now?
Sure.
Okay. If you have filed a return for 2019 and you owe, is your stimulus check reduced or applied to any taxes owed?
No, you will get your check.
Excellent.
So I think the common misconception here is this is a credit on your 2020 tax return. So it's not on your 2019 tax return. What's going to happen is there's going to be a reconciliation process. So I've had clients say, oh, well, I made less money in 18. So if they look at my 18 return, I qualify for the credit. If they look at my 19 return, if I file, I don't qualify for the credit. So I'm just not going to file my 19. I'm going to get the stimulus check and I got free money. No, when you file your 2020 tax return, they're going to reconcile that information. So,
and this is all on adjusted gross income, right?
Yes. So it used to be the front of, you know, that bottom number on the front of your tax return, but when they changed it to the, I don't know, postcard, a 3/4 page, it's like line 11 or something like that. But it's not your taxable income, it's your adjusted gross income.
Okay.
In fact, on the stimulus checks, they should be starting soon. I, in fact, got an email from the IRS telling me how much my stimulus check was going to be based on my 18 return because I have not filed my 19 return yet. So I got that email on Sunday, and then when I logged into my Navy Federal account, they notified me that they were going to start depositing stimulus checks that they've received starting April 15th through the end of the year. So what's happening is if you filed an 18 or 19 return and you were getting refunds and you had bank account information because that was being direct deposited into your account, they're going to directly deposit your stimulus check into your bank account. So you will need to check that.
How do they know the account? How do they know where to put that check?
Because they have your account information from your wherever you told them to direct deposit the money from the year before. If you owed or wanted a paper check, you're going to get a paper check and it's going to take longer.
Okay. So if somebody has changed bank accounts from the prior year, they should pay attention to that.
No, because if I just saw a question that came up, and I don't know if this is the same thing, but if they try to deposit the money and the account is no longer open, you're going to get a paper check.
Okay, that was the question.
It's not, if you no longer have that account, you don't have to keep checking that account.
Okay.
So if the account's closed, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you need to worry about. You should get a paper check.
Okay.
Because they do, lo and behold, this was a few years ago, I didn't put the initial zeros on the bank account for a direct deposit. So my client, unfortunately, got a paper check because they couldn't match. And there is a matching process with that. So,
took a little longer, but he got it.
He got it. He didn't even say anything to me, but I found out the next year, like when I did the return, I'm like, that's not right. So that's what happened there. So they do check names. So if for some reason something doesn't match up, that's fine. You'll just get a paper check in the mail and it's going to take longer to get it. And again, you do not have to file a tax return to get this check. All right, there's an IRS website. They had to install a tool just so people didn't have to file all these tax returns unnecessarily. There is a tool on the IRS website that allows you to enter in your information so you get the check without filing a tax return.
Okay.
The next point, any other questions on the stimulus checks before we go to distributions from retirement accounts?
Yes, we have one. I did hear that if a refund was direct deposited last year, the funds will go to the same account, even if it's a married couple that are no longer together. Is that true? David, I think that goes to the woman, no matter what. Is that right, Christy?
Well, that's what it's supposed to do, right? And I believe that information is correct. Because they're trying to get the checks out based on your 2018, 2019 tax returns. And if you filed a joint account and had your old account on there and that account is still open, yeah, you're going to get one check. They're not checking court records to see who still made it, right? So there could be a problem with that, trying to get it from your spouse.
Hopefully if it's amicable. I have another question here, Christy. Does the IRS retain bank information used for estimated payments? As self-employed individual, I usually pay at the end.
That is a really good question, Pablo. If you pay at the end and they have record of your bank account, I feel like they may deposit that check in there. Because they said if they had your bank account information, they were going to put it in there. Now, most people don't like to have the electronic withdrawals from their account when they file their tax returns. I might have 3 clients who do that. I would think that they would use that information.
Makes sense too.
Yeah.
The other thing is, Pablo said, I do pay through irs.gov every month.
So irs.gov, did you set up if you set up an account, then they might have that and may use that. If you're paying through like direct pay, which is an IRS.gov website, they're not going to keep that bank account information because you have to go in and put it in every time. So I can't say for sure. What they've told me or what I've read is they're using the bank account information that was listed on the tax return. So if you're paying directly through irs.gov, they may not use that information. I'm sorry, that's about as clear as mud, but.
And another question, just want to make sure I understand. If you make over 200K, you're not eligible.
Correct. Married filing joint couple.
99,000, right? It's 99,000.
It's well, single is 99, and you're getting reduced limits up to 99. But married filing joint, it's 198. So sounds like you're just over that threshold.
That was for a single. Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. Okay, so retirement accounts. Going back to the mortgages and how am I going to make my mortgage payment? The IRS is allowing for up to $100,000 distributions, COVID related, that are coming out penalty free if you're under the 59.5. What they're also allowing is that you can claim that income if you're not able to put that money back into your retirement account within 3 years, which is typically 60 days. You can not claim that as income. So it's no longer going to be taxable income. What I would be doing in this scenario is I would be filing your tax return and I would be claiming the income over the 3-year period, which you have to make an election for. And then if I'm able to put that money back in within the 3-year time period, I would go back and amend those returns and take that income off saying we've redeposited this money within the 3-year allotted time frame. So
are these checks taxable checks when you're getting these stimulus checks?
Oh, the stimulus checks, they are not taxable. They are a credit to your tax bill for 2020.
Okay.
So you're not going to have to turn around and claim them as taxable income when you file your 2020 tax return.
Okay.
Okay, so back to the retirement accounts. So if you put money, if you take out up to $100,000, which is the limit, and then you're able to put that money back in over the next 3-year period, you can exclude that income from your tax returns. So that's huge, because usually if you take money out, you're paying a 10% penalty if you're under 59.5, and you're claiming it on it as income. So you're getting a double whammy there. And you have the election, if you're not able to put it back in, that you're going to claim this income over the next 3 years. So instead of doing it all in one shot, which taxes all of your income more, right?
So let me be clear. So I borrow money from my 401k.
Mm-hmm.
I am not able to repay it all in the first year, but I can repay it in 3 years and not have any tax consequence and no penalty to that.
Well, let's distinguish there a little bit. You are allowed to take a loan from your 401k that's not included in your taxable income. The IRS has increased those 401k loan amounts. So this is more for if you're taking a withdrawal from, say, a simple IRA or a traditional IRA that you have,
Okay.
something like that. Your 401k, you're allowed to take a loan from that 401k if you are still employed with that employer. You're allowed to take loans without claiming them as income.
Okay.
As soon as you leave that employer or change jobs or something like that, then it's taxable income if you have not paid it back. But so this is more for like traditional IRA withdrawals or something of that nature.
Okay. And so the same question would apply. So if you borrow $20,000 to make ends meet, you have 3 years to pay that back, and there's no penalty, no early withdrawal penalty or anything like that.
Correct.
It's good. That's important for people to know. Now, as an accountant, and I know this is a hard question to answer, but would you recommend that if somebody is in dire straits and they need money? I know we're always told never take money from IRAs, don't ever take money from your 401k, try, exhaustive measures not to do that. Is this an exhaustive measure where this makes sense to do it at this time?
I mean, I certainly think these are extraordinary circumstances. And I would take money out of my 401k or my retirement account to keep my home.
Right.
And that's really a personal opinion, I think. Financially, obviously, you don't want to take money out if you can find another method, but usually other methods, if you scraped all your pennies together, is borrowing, and who are you going to borrow from right now? So I would make that hard choice if I had to. And because there's no penalty, and because I have the option to put the money back in if I can at a later date, I mean, I think the stars are aligning here to make this really a viable option. I did see David Ratty's comment about theoretically you could buy a home. No, David, it's got to be COVID related, right? You're not buying a home and
asking for somebody else. I'm going to read the rest of that question because later, if people are watching, they won't know what it says. But it says, so theoretically, you could pull this money, buy a home, then sell it a year later and keep the profits and not have a penalty or taxes on the distribution, asking for a friend.
Yeah. So you're going to have to prove hardship when you go to take this money out. And you're going to have to prove, and again, all of this has no guidance, right? It's only been out for 3 weeks. You haven't even had to do a tax return yet. People aren't withdrawing from their 401ks yet. So you don't know what kind of documentation you're going to have to provide to take this money out saying it's COVID related. You just don't know where we are.
I was on a different Zoom call maybe 2 weeks ago. There were 2 different accountants on there. A question would be asked. One person would say, we don't know the answer to that. And the other one would say, actually, I just got word from, and he'd be able to answer it. Back and forth the whole time it was like that because new information, stuff has changed. It's just this moving target. So it's been very hard to pin down.
It is so hard to keep track. It's impossible. It's an impossible job I can't even imagine the people trying to write the legislation right now because I just can't imagine. It's
exhaustive.
Too much. It is too much. It's so much. And the different industries that it's impacting is not able to keep up with the changes. I mean, we'll get to that in the PPP part.
I was going to ask that question when we got there. But Pablo has a question. Normally, any loan against a 401k can be amortized over 5 years, paid monthly or quarterly. Is this still the case?
This is still the case. They've increased the loan amount, and I'm sorry, I don't know what the loan amount is that they've increased it to, but I do know that they increased it. Thank you. So they've increased it to 100,000 that you can take out. My understanding, though, to coincide with that, Pablo, and you might know better than I do, but if you have a loan outstanding with your employer and you take out that $100,000 and you leave that employer, that's going to be taxable income immediately with prepayment penalties, possibly, unless we can go back and confirm that this was taken out for COVID purposes. So there's going to be a lot of finagling when we go to do these later year returns.
And Pablo, I've unmuted you, so if you had to say anything, you're welcome to speak up.
I didn't want to barge in. I just,
Oh, that's okay.
that, like Christy said, there is a lot of guidance that we've still yet to receive. And this could change at any minute. You know, today it could be it's 3 years, and now there may be a testing for whether this was COVID related, or like David's friend who wants to, you know, take an opportunity to go roll the dice and make some money tax free. So we don't know what that testing could be. It may just be that, hey, it might be a checkbox on your tax return that says, was this for COVID related hardship? But we don't know.
Right. I mean, you can ask for a paragraph statement or ask for bank statements. You know, they just haven't given us what those requirements are. And I don't expect to get those requirements really anytime soon, because those tax returns aren't due for, you know, a year. So.
I do know my question. I do know my parental question. So, oh no, I'm going to forget it again.
Oh.
See, I have to write it down or I'm going to forget it. Oh, if people want to not pay their rent, they decide I don't want to pay my rent, do they have to show a hardship, or renters just don't have to pay rents now?
So, I mean, I don't know that they have to show hardship right now because there's no eviction process. The landlord cannot get them out of their space because the courts are not open. That being said, is that how I want to do business? Probably not.
Right.
Is that kind of person the one that I want to do business with? If that's my renter? No, I'd have much more respect and compassion for somebody who's going to reach out to me and talk to me. But no, they don't have to.
Okay. That was one of our questions, because there's people that own apartment complexes and they have 100 renters in there. I can't imagine the hardship that person will be in, renting to each person in an apartment complex and no one's paying their rent. That's a tough situation.
So, there is a part in the CARES Act for multi-family units, and there's moratoriums for those as well. I'm not as familiar with those. I didn't read a ton into that because I personally don't have any apartment complexes that are calling me right now. But there is a section in there for that, right under where all the personal moratoriums are. So that is
Some
still an
protections.
option.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Next slide. Okay. So for our 1099s, and let's clarify what an independent contractor is in my mind so that we're all talking the same language. So an independent contractor in my mind is somebody who is getting a 1099 from a large employer, so our larger employer. So let's say, Diane, I'm working for you as a sub and I'm doing your advertising work, and you issue me a 1099 at the end of the year. That to me is an independent contractor, and I'm just filing a little Schedule C on my tax return. typically these independent contractors did not qualify for unemployment benefits or for the small business administration loans that were available. Now, under the CARES Act, under the pandemic unemployment insurance part of it, they do now qualify for unemployment. So if they have not filed for unemployment yet, they should do so immediately. Nope, just kidding. They need to go to this website immediately because the applications are not available yet. Where this website is here, there's a spot where you can put in your email to get updated for when that application becomes available. So that's what I would do. I would go to that website, I'd put my email address in, and I would check my email every day to see when that's available, because they are now eligible for unemployment benefits and should apply. You also qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program. For this, you would apply through your regular banking institution. Just because you apply doesn't mean you're going to get approved. So if you have a terrible credit rating, or you don't have any net profit from your industry or from your Schedule C, you're not going to get approved, right? But your normal businesses that are showing profit year to year are able to apply and will most likely get approved. And you don't have to have employees to get this loan. You yourself are an employee of your Schedule C, so you would still qualify for the loan even if you have no other employees.
And I know, Christy, that I've had a lot of people who I've talked with who said that they've tried to go to different banks to get it. And they said, no, we're not going to give you money unless you have banking business here. And then some of them said you have to have a business banking relationship here. And other banks have said, we're clear out of money. Any tips on that, or they just have to keep trying?
So let's keep in mind the CARES Act just came out on March 27th. The banks had to have these applications and processes in place that following Friday. So they had 7 days, not even 7 business days, 7 days to get up and running. And it's just been a cluster. Mm-hmm. I mean, for no better way of putting it, it has been a cluster. The banks are working in the same environments we are all working in. So they're trying to roll out platforms, not to mention the digital platforms. And I don't know anything about IT. That's got to be a nightmare in and of itself to have a whole new platform devised.
Well, they were crashing. We went online to try to do all of the things that we're talking about today. And every time we would go on, everything would just crash. And so you really have to have patience. And I was very impatient with the process, not the people, because I understand that we are trying to get the United States to all do this in a day. Yeah. So of course it's going to crash. But you know, and I've heard from on the Zoom call that I had a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was a week ago, they said that of all of their clients so far, one person that they knew of had gotten money from it yet.
That doesn't surprise me. There is a disconnect in knowledge between the banking industry and the accounting and the payroll industry, which those are the records they're requesting, and what their applications say. So, for example, I had a client's application get returned to us because the 941 number did not match the salary number that was listed on the borrower form. Well, that number is never going to match because the 940 calculation includes retirement benefits and fringe benefits, whereas your application says salaries on one line, retirement benefits on another line, and included with your health insurance. So they returned an application saying it wasn't complete or correct when it was in fact correct based on how their form is listed. So there's a disconnect in the knowledge, and you know, they're bankers, they don't know payroll. Mm-hmm. If there's somebody looking at an application and they don't understand payroll unless you've been doing it for 100 years. Like, I would expect David, who's been in the mortgage industry for a long time, to understand what payroll forms look like to some degree. But these bankers, who knows who's looking at the application?
Right.
So there's just a disconnect in the knowledge, and we have to be patient. I saw a comment that maybe we were out of money. No, we're not out of money yet. It's impossible. If one person has received money, there's no way they've ran out of $349 billion.
So let me ask you this, Chrissy. That's a good question, because I've heard the same thing that Jessica's asking. Is the money in a big pot and all of the banks have access to it, or is there the money and Bank of America gets this much, Wells Fargo gets this much, etc.? Do you know how that's broken out?
My understanding is there's this pot of money, and all the SBA approved lenders are going to this money, and it's not that a certain amount is designated to this bank or to that bank. It's just a pot of money. So my understanding with Wells Fargo in particularly is that they were just inundated with applications and could not handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they said, we're not taking any more applications. And I spent 2 days on the phone there, and they pretty much said, we're going to look after the bigger companies than you. That's what they said.
Well, and unfortunately, it is their right to do that, because the money is coming from the SBA, but they're going through their own lending practices and borrowing requirements, which is really unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not going to look good after this either, because I have a client who is at Wells Fargo, and they are they're livid.
Well, let me say,
I'm pulling all of my money out of Wells Fargo. Where is it going? I don't know yet, but it's not Wells Fargo.
that's the thing, is people are going to remember who took care of them in a time of need. So if they're interested in big business, let the big business, continue to do business with them, and let us little people not. That's a decision that they're going to make.
And that goes totally against Wells Fargo's whole image and what they said that who their client base was. They're a small business now. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I got nothing on that. So Wells Fargo, the money is not gone. I have not seen anything where the money is gone. It would just be impossible, because nobody has gotten money yet. Except for maybe a small handful of people who applied on day one and had all their ducks in a row. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. But anyway, if you are going to apply for this loan, you want to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row so that you don't have to come back through this process. So make sure you have a profit and loss statement. If you haven't filed your tax return yet. If you have filed your tax return, make sure you have your Schedule C attached, so that you're providing information on whatever your net profit is for your lending capabilities. Any other questions on that?
David Ratty said, no, pull all your money. Can you imagine the funnel to process it all? No, I can't. I can't imagine the workload that people are going through. We've talked about all the people and the doctors and the nurses and everybody on the front lines, and there's just a whole lot of other people that are working really, really hard, and a lot of hours that, we applaud them. But people will remember who takes care of the little people.
Yeah. And Wells Fargo, if they don't go under after this, I would be so surprised.
Wow. Well, we all make our decisions.
That's right. That's right. So, okay, why don't we go to the next slide? All right, so there's also, through the SBA, which you would apply directly through the SBA, there is an economic injury disaster loan that all small businesses are eligible for. And they've had this application process in place, so it is a lot smoother. You just have to go through like a page of certifications that you're not a felon, that you're actually a business, even a small business or independent contractor, that you do have a business, you're not an employee somewhere else. And there is a grant that's supposed to be available immediately, $10,000, that if you do not get approved for the loan, you still don't have to pay it back. So this is a free money concept. So we've been telling people to apply anyway, just in case you get the $10,000. I do not know of any clients who have received any money from the EIDL program yet, but it's supposed to be available. Next slide. And then, which is actually just the last slide. These are some websites that I've been using that I've found are really helpful. The IRS website is actually really good. It's pretty clear. It tells you where to go. As every other website business out there, they have that COVID banner for where you need to click. They also have the non-filers enter payment info here website up and running. I put the link in for the EIDL loan, which is the disaster assistance website. I also put in the link for the additional policy guidance that they gave on the PPP loan. I feel like that's really more for people who do have employees and trying to determine how much they qualify for. So I didn't really go into that here, but all that information is there. And that's really all I have, unless you have more questions.
That's great. And I think that if you guys wanted to take a picture of that, the resources, and we'll also make that available. And then, you know, those were the things that we wanted to talk about today, the individuals and the small businesses, because that's most of my clients, right? I don't rub elbows with people that run big corporations that would be listening to us. But a couple of the other things that are involved in this that you should be aware of in case you have friends or family that it would pertain to. And one thing is the tax returns. We know that those were delayed to July 15th, right, Christy?
Correct. And your first quarter and your second quarter estimated tax payments, if you have to make them, are not due until July 15th. They just move the second quarter estimated tax payment to July. It's usually due in June.
Perfect. Okay. And then I had a couple of little notes here for emergency grants up to 10,000. We talked a little bit about that. Forgivable loans. And there was one, there's a veteran, there's a protection for veterans. Do you know about that, Christy? Veterans healthcare. I don't know much about it, but I wanted to say on the call that there is 20 billion set aside for veterans. Let's get that information out for the people that that need that. So it doesn't go into detail about what it is.
Okay.
But let's make sure that our veterans know that there is a veterans healthcare that is $20 billion. Money is set aside for them.
I'm assuming that is going to the VA hospitals.
That's what I would imagine. Ventilation systems or things like that.
Yes.
And then it says that the child nutrition, there's 8.8 billion to give schools for flexibility to provide meals for students. Well, they're not in school, so I don't know if that's, I don't know how that would be distributed.
So I think there were still maybe in some low income areas, schools were still providing meals because those kids were going without eating, right? So
And were they, was that a drive up? I saw some video footage of that people were driving up, like the food banks where they would drive up, get food. I wonder if that's going to be the same thing for some of the schools.
that would be,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. All the schools in my area, I jog near 2 of the schools, and Monday through Friday, there is a long line of cars in Pasadena that are picking up meals every day.
Excellent.
oh, good. That's in there. Yeah, and in addition, there is they are working on another stimulus package. I don't know what that's going to entail. I don't know when that's coming out, but there is supposed to be another stimulus package at some point. So, because I think this is going on longer than anybody anticipated, and seeing the rollout from the CARES Act and how it did not come out efficiently, I think they're trying to make some corrections or
Improvements.
improvements in the process.
Improvements.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they'll go yell at Wells Fargo and tell them to get their act together.
Yes. I'll tell you, obviously we're not promoting anybody, but I do my business banking through Bank of America, and they have been wonderful.
I've heard, I have not done any applications through Bank of America, but I have heard that it was a very easy process. BB&T was okay. What I didn't like about BB&T was you had to go out to a whole nother website, and it wasn't even on their platform. You couldn't get to it from their normal platform. So
I'm sure they were afraid it was going to blow, like other sites have been blowing.
I read on there you had to have a business account with them established in February. Too bad they won't change that, because I would take all my money out of Wells Fargo and go with another bank today. But
yeah.
From what I've read, that account has to be established as of February.
Okay. Well, does anybody else have any questions? Christy, this has been really, really helpful. Does anybody have any last questions that they want to ask?
Hey, Christy, on the IRA guidance that we've gotten so far, do we have any idea of how Roth withdrawals are going to be handled for COVID-related expenses?
I would expect that the Roth withdrawal would still be penalty-free if it doesn't meet the qualifications, but typically the Roth withdrawals come out tax-free anyway. So I don't think that they put this in there intentionally, because the distributions, as long as they're qualified, are tax-free. But to answer your question directly, I don't believe so. Just for that.
Yeah, I haven't seen much about it either, so.
I haven't done it, and I haven't seen anything, and just logic tells me that because they're eligible for tax-free distribution anyway, that there would be no taxable consequences for those distributions.
And then Christy, we got a question that if he wanted more advice on how to best handle his business with this type of aid, do you handle being able to answer these questions, and how can somebody get a hold of you if they have any additional questions? Your email or phone, or how would you like them to reach you?
They can call the office and set up a phone call, and we can go from there. Just tell them to say, I heard you at this webinar, so that typically there's a $250 consult fee. But I don't want to do that at this time. So obviously, we want to try to help as many people as possible, because we're all in the same boat. And just tell them that you heard me from this webinar, from the Keller Williams webinar, and there will be no consult fee, and schedule an appointment, and we'll talk via phone.
Excellent, Christy. Thanks. And what is your phone number?
It is, oh, you're so smart, Diane.
2600, right?
Yes. I would think about it for a second. Yes, 2600, 410-224-2600.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Christy. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Christy, for sharing all of your knowledge with us. This was really important because there's a lot of confusion. I certainly had a lot of confusion with some of this information. And then tomorrow at 3:30, we have a call about forbearance. If you know anybody who is in trouble or wants to be proactive or may face challenges down the road and they're anticipating that, please tune in and invite people to come. Tomorrow's going to be a pretty big deal about mortgages and what's going to happen. We're going to talk about forbearance, and we'll touch on short sales and any alternatives to that. David Ratty will be here tomorrow at 3:30. Tune in from the Donnelly Group page, and then if you would, share it, please. But any last minute questions before we go? If not, we look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow. I think that's it, Christy.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Guys.
Thank you.